Sure you don't want the test?
Oh, but I love it so much.
That was a melody. I want that melody.
Let's see. We'll aim it more your direction.
Either way, it'll work.
And first question is, when did you get your first guitar, and how did that change your life, if that particular incident did?
I don't recall getting first guitar. I shared guitars with friends before I actually got one, and I played a guy's Silvertone when I was 17, and played another guy's Dan Electro 12-string. So it was about at age 17. It's basically when I started playing. I don't recall the specific guitar that I got that was mine. I was too broke to buy a guitar, so I more borrowed friends' guitars. And boy, if you don't think it's rough playing lead on the Dan Electro 12-string, it's tough.
Okay. Was there any particular band or gig that you went to that influenced you more than anything else?
I would say seeing the original Yardbirds with Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page, at Fillmore was pretty powerful influence on me. Seeing Cream at Winterland is pretty powerful for me. Hendrix, obviously, is powerful. Those early bands, that kind of stuff really got to me. I much more liked the Yardbirds with Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page than I did the live Zeppelin things, even though, in my opinion, Jimmy Page is the most prolific guitar riff writer to have ever lived on this planet. I mean, a lot of people sort of slag him for not being the greatest live player, but no one has written more identifiable guitar riffs. When you think about all of the riffs that he's written, one of the best.
What was your first big break?
Playing with Van Morrison on the Tupelo Honey album. Being offered, well, you're getting a lot of throat clearing today. Being offered to be in Van Morrison's band and play and do the Tupelo Honey album and play with him was a pretty serious break. And then obviously getting the offer to play with Edgar Winter was another big break. So.
Okay, which leads to the next one. Considering the success of playing with such bands as Van Morrison and Edgar Winter Group, what was the driving force behind forming Montrose?
Growing pains in Edgar's band. There just wasn't quite enough room for the talent that and the desire that everyone had in the band. I did, Dan Hartman did, and Rick Derringer was in producing his group for a while, and there were so many influences that I needed the creative vehicle to be something that I could drive myself, as opposed to being in somebody else's band and working for someone.
Was there any particular reason why Sammy Hagar departed Montrose, and how did this affect the band musically and or emotionally?
We have a long-standing joke now, because I did fire him from the Montrose band. It doesn't look, you got to make sure how you word this too, because it doesn't look as good. You have to make sure you word it humorously.
Right.
But it doesn't look good in print. But I did fire him from the band just for the same reasons. He was like onto his own thing and had much more things that he wanted to do personally than to do in a band format. Same thing I did with Edgar. But the joke is running that the two jokes running is that it took Van Halen a lot longer than it took me to fire him, and the other one is when I was playing on his last album, he said people keep asking me like, what happened to you? And Sammy goes, shit, I guess Ronnie fired me and fired everybody else. I think he fired himself. So put LOL or something there.
I'll get it humorously in there. And how did that change the band musically and or emotionally?
The band, I mean, the dynamic of the original Montrose band, like I said, when I went back in and played with the original four of us together in the studio and seeing each other and playing with each other for the first time in about 20 years, made me rediscover and realize how powerful of a trio that band was. And that band was never the same, not only after Sam was gone, but the band was never the same when Bill left too. And it was Sammy's friend Alan Fitzgerald who we all sort of decided we wanted more from a bass player, and Bill's a damn fine bass player and wonderful rock bass player, but at that point we thought we wanted keyboards and and a more harmonic structure to bass. So the band really, in my opinion, was never the same after the first album, because it was the original four people and the dynamic of those people interacting together that had the power.
Open Fire is considered by many a landmark instrumental album. What was your inspiration to do an entire instrumental album?
I had just basically gotten tired of touring on the road with a vocalist, and just the whole process of doing vocal-oriented, sort of like attempting to write vocal-oriented songs, to me felt like going through the motions. And if you're going to go through the motions, you might as well, just do any gig that causes you to do repetitive motions like banging a hammer or, serving fries. I mean, it's like, it just didn't make sense to me at the time, and it really hasn't made sense to me to do that. So it was what I wanted to do. I was following my muse, and I was very fortunate in having good people around me, and it turned out to be a pretty good record.
An excellent record.
In my opinion.
I really enjoyed it.
A lot of rock fans and fans of the vocal-oriented Montrose band hated that record, but then there were reviews who said that the album sucked, and then there were reviews from people who said, finally he's doing something good. So you just, you don't please everybody.
Right. Which brings it back to the turn of events of Back to a Vocal Band. How did the band Gamma come to be, and was there any particular reasons why it disbanded when it did?
Gamma was a logical progression after doing the Open Fire record. I was working with Bill Graham Management at the time, and they were, it was obvious to everyone concerned that albums like Open Fire, while they were good for me creatively, weren't going to really be commercially successful. So I didn't have any problem at the time doing. I had gotten sort of shaken off the doldrum of vocal-oriented music with the sort of last Montrose albums that we did. The last two Montrose albums, I felt I was in a real rut there, and so by doing the Open Fire album, I was ready to do another vocal album. It was a logical progression, and we actually called up, because we're such fans of Jimmy Dewar that's how I found Davey. Is I called Jimmy Dewar in London and talked to him, and Jimmy told me about Davey and said that he's one of the best undiscovered singers around, and he was definitely right. So Davey got out and we did it. I don't know, was there other parts to it?
Just why it disbanded.
Gamma disbanded because one of the main reasons is that after the Gamma 3 record, there was such an attempt to manufacture the quote single that it was again seeming to me like the music business was capital business, uppercase capital business, and lowercase music. Then the music was actually in parentheses. It was the music business, and whenever I sense that, and I know now that the music is a business, but there's also a way to go about making music that's true to yourself, and as opposed to doing, sort of like going through the motions and making things that will just be commercially successful. So, and then I think Gamma sort of got to that point through management and label and the whole deal. So it just didn't feel right, so I stopped it.
It's funny, I can kind of understand where they'd start pushing for that, but it's kind of surprising because that album was, at least on radio airplay, extremely popular. I heard it on a lot of radio.
Well, the other thing too is that they didn't do the type of promotion, and it was like one of those things you can look back and say would have, could have, should have. But also when we had like really strong airplay with a song called "I'm Alive," which was a Hollies tune that we covered, as opposed to staying here and going across the country and touring. The management and record company, in their infinite brilliance and wisdom, preferred that Gamma went to Europe and opened a dismal tour with Foreigner, which I actually left the tour because it was so pathetic and boring that we didn't. For someone who seemed to want to capitalize on it, they did, in my opinion, did the wrong moves. You see, I'm so fucking tired today. I'm like really saying edgy shit, but
I don't have any specific questions about.
So fuck, I got a hard attitude today. I don't, but in no way, shape, or form, when you write this down, in no way, shape, or form, because I'm tired and I haven't had any sleep, I'm saying things that may sound like I'm bitter. And
I can email it to you and have you prove it.
It's fine, but just remember, I'm not coming. If I'm coming across like I'm bitter, I'm not. Right. I'm cynical, but I'm not in any way.
Well, I'll email you the printout so you can verify it to make sure there's nothing in there first.
All right.
I don't have any specific questions about Territory or Mean, so if you have any comment you would like to say.
Territory was a hodgepodge album. It was a bunch of demos that I had put together. That I had produced Jeff Berlin's Champion album for him, and it was on the Passport Jazz label. And Territory, the person who was, I forget his name, who was at the label, said, if you have a bunch of stuff that is put together, I'd done some demos with Mitchell Froome that were on there, and done demos for other things, and I just basically just sort of thrown together album. That is one of my least favorite of my records, and yet I get a lot of people who tell me they really like it. So
the opening song reminds me of Condition Yellow.
I'm sure it did. It was around, Mitchell and I were writing it around the same time, that kind of music. So
any comments on Mean?
Actually, I enjoyed doing Mean. That's another case of I did that record with Johnny Edwards, who then later went to sing with Foreigner, and James Kotak, who drummed with the band called Kingdom Come, which is a Zeppelin clone band, and with Glenn Letch, who, as you know, was in Gamma and toured with Robin Trower. And I just put that record together because I just wanted to do, I liked both Johnny and James. They were in a band called Buster Brown, and I really enjoyed working with them. I mean, it was great. I knew we weren't going to be able to do a band, but I just asked them if they'd like to come out and do a project, Had I known that Buster Brown wouldn't have stayed together, I'd have suggested that we actually went out and toured a little bit with that band, because it was a tight, fun band to be in. But at that point, was under the assumption that I was just borrowing Johnny and James from Buster Brown, and they were going to get a big deal and go out and do that. So I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Bunch of silly rock songs, but I enjoyed it.
There's one or two in there I really like. In the late 80s, you released The Speed of Sound and The Devastation. Many critics as well as fans have commented this is some of your finest work, definitely at least some of your finest instrumental work. Was there anything in particular at this point in time that made these albums special?
Speed of Sound is my favorite instrumental album that I've done. I would, like anyone else, probably prefer to remix it, but remember I told you, it's mixed, let it go. But I did that with the well wishes of Bill Hine with Enigma Records, and with his encouragement, which was great. He really didn't want anything. He didn't want anything other than a good instrumental guitar album. And so with that, we had done the Mean album, and the problem with the Mean album, once again, is that the record company it didn't have the ability to follow up on the promotion that was gained and the airplay that was gained by when we covered Wayne Fontana and the Mindbenders' Game of Love. So at that point, Bill Hine, I guess, as sort of like an extension of goodwill, said, listen, just make me a definitive guitar album. And so knowing that I had a budget for it, and that the timing was right, and I got one of my favorite drummers around, Johnny Bedanjic, who played with the original Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels on all of those wonderful hits they did. I actually played with Johnny a couple times Johnny Bedanjic is playing on Edgar Winter's Free Ride also. He's on that album, on the Frankenstein album. But Johnny was available and came out to play, and once again, with Johnny and Glenn, I just had such a great time. That's the comment on it. I don't know, was there anything else about it?
That was basically it.
Yeah, it was a really fun album. I'm very pleased with the work that I did on it, and the sound of the inspiration was really there for me. So.
Much of your work in the late 80s and early 90s is either out of print
or crap,
IRS and Enigma, or not yet on CD, i.e. Gamma only having the best of Gamma.
Which is never, it was good to see that Gamma out, but it was not I can't fathom how. I mean, I wasn't really involved in the selection of the Best of Gamma, but how the Best of Gamma could not include Solar Heat and Ready for Action, which was the opening piece on the first Gamma record, is beyond me. I don't get it. And the record did really well too. The Best of Gamma did really well.
And it's still in print as far as I know.
Yeah, it does well. I mean, it's a. I can't fault Crescendo Records for putting it out because it does well. But I just never really understood the album artwork and cover, nor did I understand the omission of Solar Heat and Ready for Action. But that's the way it was.
Well, this part of this question goes along with what you've already told me a little bit about. Have you made any attempts to get the rights back to any of your music to have it reissued?
What we can't do is that has to be completely off the record.
Okay, so
and I'll tell you why.
I can turn this off and you can just tell me.
I don't care.
But I'll do this so we don't answer it.
The thing is that I will tell you too, if you ever discuss it with anyone, it's like trying to get your film right back. If I get rights back to it, I need to sell on my site and to make it available, which I'd love to do that and provide that in a limited quantity. I'm not talking about doing big business. And once I do, then you'll certainly be able to include some of this stuff, but it needs to be exclusive rights and not sort of like, oh, well, we'll give you can do it, but if it's not exclusive rights and any label sees that you're selling records off of your site, and if they see that you're doing good, they will then release it in stores, and then they undermine you. Yeah.
Okay,
so you understand that?
Yeah, I understand that, and
that's why all that has to be off.
But you are working with them to try and get
I'm trying to get Speed of Sound,
but not the Gamma stuff. Just
no, because Neil and Crescendo got that. No, I'm trying to get Speed of Sound, Devastation, Mutatis Mutandis, those back from the two companies that are belly up anyway. So,
right.
But Capitol and I think Polygram has the right has the masters. I was offered to get back my masters to Territory. Didn't want it. They offered to give it to me for like $5,000.
There are people on the webpage asking about that, trying to get a hold of copies too.
Yeah.
I was curious if you got the rights to Mutatis, would you try and get the song from Guitar Speak and put that on there as well? Add it as a bonus
No, you
track?
couldn't do that.
Wouldn't be able to do that.
I don't think you'd be able to do that.
Okay.
But Alley. Yeah. Well, wait, what I would do, and just tell you, I would certainly, if I do things off of my site, I would try to get, I would change a little bit of the artwork on these things. Still keep the feel, but have Michelle do like a look that comes, like that everything comes off has a look.
A little more intrinsic.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So go ahead.
I had multiple people ask this, and I wasn't quite sure where they got it, but they said, did you ever tour as a band called Phys Ed?
No, I did not tour as a band called Phys Ed. I was producing demos for a band that was called Physical Ed.
Okay.
And out of the production of demos, I went and did a few jam sessions with them in Northern California. But no, I never.
That's what.
I went and jammed with them a few times.
The Anti-M question.
Look at that special. Oh, nice.
Nice parking job too.
Mm-hmm.
In 1995, you played on 4 tracks on the independent release of Anti-M Positively Negative.
It's one of the most horrible fucking projects I ever did.
Was there anything in particular about this horrible project that made you interested in it?
No, I liked actually about Anti-M, I liked the quirkiness of it. I know that a lot of people say have told me that it sounds kind of 80s, and after talking to you guys, I know why it sounds 80s. And I don't have a problem with it sounding 80s. But I actually, and I told you this before, I felt like once I came, timing was good, coming through Santa Barbara, the whole deal, but I was very satisfied knowing that I could come in a day and, not really know what I was going to do, but at the end of the session know that I'd really done satisfying guitar work, and I knew that I really contributed to the music on that CD, and it was a very satisfying experience doing that. So I don't know what else I can tell you, but it was a good experience because I challenged myself to take music that, I wasn't really, you don't have to print this, but I wasn't completely like blown away by the music, saying I have to play on this, because it wasn't, the music was kind of sketchy, but that was part of the beauty of the process, was just taking ideas and then adding and making it happen. And I think I'm very pleased and very satisfied with that.
Yeah. Plus, when you came in, all you had heard was our very basic demos.
That's right. So it was a satisfying experience.
Okay. And of course, we were very pleased with it as well. You recently did work and released the soundtrack on the Sega Genesis game Mr. Bones. What was it like to work on the soundtrack to such a complex video game?
The soundtrack was an absolute pure joy, and it was a wonderful experience. Mr. Bones was a tedious, long, exhausting experience for me, that when I first went in there, I was told by the producer that we want you to do the soundtrack for this game. It's a guitar-driven game. And I actually ended up acting in it. I did a bit part. I played a blind guitar player that Mr. Bones, there's actually, I actually get you a copy of that. There's footage of me jamming with, motion capture skeleton. We're both playing Strats and sitting in a computer-generated, green screen computer-generated.
And I saw your virtual guitar.
Yeah. I did all the also not only composed it, but I did all the moves that were in the cinematic parts of Mr. Bones. That move the story along. I don't know what anybody else in film, what that's called. What that wouldn't it be called? It's parts in the it's film segues that lead you up to the next level. They just called them cinematic cues, but I don't know.
It's probably
a technical term for it.
Slightly different in a video game than in a film.
But I was told it was going to take 6 months, and it ended up taking 2 years. But it was very just tedious, the process of doing of having your music much in the way that the Martian Chronicles, I believe. And one of the segments, it's funny, some Mars tie-in, but one of the little pieces in the Martian Chronicles was where a city took a space traveler, and the city was trained. The city was a finely trained machine that dissected every single cell in his body and put him back together just to find out who he was, And I felt like my music that was done to my music. It had to be done like that for the CD game, because obviously there's not enough memory in video games on the CD to go, to have a running 44.1 frequency response event happen, because you're fighting for time with all of the game structure in the CD. It's really technical, but the point was that they were able to do that. It took a lot of time, and they sampled my actual vibrato, all the nuance of my playing, all of the pick attack, everything that I did, my slide, and were able to, because they're very talented, break it down, loop it, do all the things that were necessary to have it fit in the environment that they needed to. However, on the Mr. Bones soundtrack, none of those constraints were there. I was able to call in Myron Dove and Billy Johnson and a keyboard player that they knew named Joe Heineman from the Santana band. I mean, Myron and Billy were with Carlos, and just play them demos and come in and just make music. And it was such a release and such a joy after those, the culmination of the 2 years of work with Sega, like painstakingly going in and having your music torn apart and put back together. It was just an absolute joy to just go in and play music and play with world-class players and make good music.
It's an enjoyable album too. I like it quite a bit.
I do too. I'm real happy with that. Very blues oriented, but that was the nature of this. And also the album was another good thing about the album was that I was really challenged to dynamically underscore all the cinematic pieces, which I really enjoyed, because I felt like I came through, and it was a serious challenge for me, and it was very rewarding.
I hear you have a live album in the works featuring the lineup from Music From Here and the tour. And that's just kind of open-ended. Any comments on that?
Yes, well, that's what I'm doing right now as we're preparing. My son, Jesse, is a very, very gifted programmer and is helping me set up my page, my personal page. And Michelle not only is a drummer, but is a very qualified artist. And we're going for, on the page, very organic feel, all hand-rendered things. We're trying to stay completely away from any computer graphics whatsoever, and to keep it. And there's Jesse's also trying to make it. His gauntlet is that he wants to make it a very, very innovative page that people who may not even know me or my music through word of mouth want to come and see the page because it's wide open. There's no constraints, so he's going to do some interesting things. But on that line, that's the Mr. Bones project. We had just finished doing a live recording, a multi-track recording of some dates in Northern California, and the Mr. Bones thing came along, and I had to put that on the shelf. So now that that's over with, that's my full attention has been to mixing, not only mixing the live thing, which will come out on a CD, and we're going to offer it on our site first. But and it was some magical nights too. We had some really nice live captured raw material. But also I'm working with a singer-songwriter, kind of folk blues, rock folk blues, and none of the descriptions really fit because he's a unique player. But I'm doing a record for him at home also, and we're gonna put that out too. His name is Chris Hutchins. Hutchins. I think it's CHRIS too. So, and that should be out, we're hoping, late fall.
Okay. We talked about this inside. You recently played on Sammy Hagar's new album, Marching to Mars, with the original lineup to Montrose on one song. Were you all in the studio together, or was it done in separate sessions, and what was it like?
Well, we did talk about that. So, there is, getting together with those guys was cathartic for me. I mean, it really was just, having not seen them and hung out with them for so long, it was just a great experience. But it did make me remember how great that initial lineup was. That was a very strong, powerful power trio with vocal. I mean, that's a pretty elegant lineup when you have just guitar, bass, drums, and a singer. And I'd forgotten how beautiful that raw lineup can be.
What can you tell me about your new studio?
It's taken a year for me to build and get together after I finished with the Mr. Bones thing. I relocated to Southern California, partly because I wanted to and partly because of Michelle's work. She works at Warner Brothers Animation. But it has been a long process. It really, because I'm kind of a Renaissance guy. You got enough tape left?
Yeah.
Because I'm a Renaissance kind of person. I not only like working in the studio, but I'm a hands-on kind of a build the patch bay, solder the connectors, do the multi-pins, wire it up myself. I really enjoy that part of it as much as making the studio work. So it's taken a long time to assemble and put together, but it's going to be, it has been rewarding, and it's going to be a very viable, working, full service studio for me and my particular projects.
All the way from recording to mastering.
Big time, yeah.
Currently like the most, or boxes, gear, that type of thing.
I typically, I don't know why, there's a lot of players, including me, that somehow evolved from Les Pauls to Strats, and I typically play Strats now. I enjoy them, and I have a couple of Telecasters and that type of thing with custom pickups in them, but I enjoy the bolt-on necks a lot better now for some reason. And effects-wise, I use not a lot, some, but I now that I'm set up in the studio, I really enjoy experimenting around, so you never know, I may pop up with some weird sounds here and there.
Do you still use the Morley box at all? I just know you recommended it to me. This isn't necessarily in the interview, I'm just curious.
Oh yeah, I still have that, the JD10.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice box.
That was a good recommendation. I really like it.
That's a good little preamp. Yeah, that works fine.
Is there any particular amplifier that gives you a sound that you like more than others?
The two amps that I use the most, that I keep coming back to, are my Mesa Boogie Maverick and my Blackface Fender Super Champ. I use that for slide guitar. I can't seem to get that tone anywhere else. I'm also pursuing soundtrack work down here in Southern California, but until I get the site up and running and get these two projects done and mixed that I told you about, I don't really have as much time as I'd like to dedicate to that.
Right.
And I know that down the line is going to come a 100% lower keyed acoustic album, but not all acoustic, but really an acoustic oriented straight guitar record for me. I haven't done one, and I want to do one. And I got a lot of material for it. I just have to sit down and do it.
Something I'll look forward to. You have done a lot of session work over the last 3 decades. Are there any sessions you feel stand out above the rest, or that you wish?
Speaking of strippers.
Yeah, she could be one. She'd make a good one.
Just kidding. Tell me again.
Out of the sessions,
Start looking back.
Out of the sessions you've done over the last 3 decades, are there any sessions you feel stand out above the rest, or that you wish more people knew about?
Boy, that's... I'll tell you the way... Why don't you check out... I'll check out, too. Check out Eric's site. He knows more about stuff that I've done than I do. You know, he has more session information on that site than I know. I didn't even remember I did half that stuff. I'll look at that, and I'll mail you with that one.
Okay.
Figuring out if there's a session that I'd like to.
And I'll give you a follow-up email just to...
Yeah, okay.
Just to check, because I won't be able to transcribe this for 2 weeks because I leave for Hawaii in 2 days.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you think you will ever do another Montrose album?
Very possibly. You never know. I mean, if the circumstance was right and the players were right, it would be a definite possibility. With the original Montrose lineup, no. With some players, maybe. I don't know. But a Montrose vocal-oriented record, I'm certainly not opposed to it. I would have to see if everything was right, but yeah.
Get the band to Gamma and call it Montrose.
Yeah, really. That was the toughest thing, is seeing Davey Patterson. When we first got Gamma, we did a couple songs, Rock the Nation, and a couple other songs, and that was tough to see poor Davey have to sing that high. He's not a high energy rock singer. He's a bluesier singer, and it was rough on him.
There's not a question for this, but I've had a lot of comments on the webpage about people asking. People have been trying to find bootlegs of your stuff. Are there any archives of any of your live concerts in the past that are recorded that ever might make their way out to an official release? King Biscuit or anything like that?
No, I do know that there is a German company has put out Montrose Rocking the Plant, and it is the first, I believe, first or second, no, it's probably the second. I think Alan Fitzgerald was in the band, but we did a broadcast at the record plant for a radio station called KSAN, and that made it to CD import in Germany, but I have no other ideas about any of the other archive stuff. Frankly, I don't think a lot of the archived music from that time, if it was on magnetic tape, unless they kept updating it, probably didn't survive. Yeah. I actually had a safety copy of one of my projects that I have in storage somewhere actually I think it was Open Fire, and they're only good for one pass halfway through the song across the heads, and then you have to stop and clean all the oxide that's coming off. So you have to be really prepared if you're going to make copies to I mean, obviously the big selling ones, they refresh the tape copies, periodically, but things like mine and many, many others, even Montrose, which is kind of cult classic band, I'm sure a lot of those original archives just didn't survive.
Well, I have no further specific questions. Do you have anything you'd like to have added or included that you wanted me to ask about
you did a damn fine job. You did a damn fine job. Good questions. Mike, you were a really good boy back there. You weren't being too rowdy.
No.
being nice, just looking at the scenery, looking at the girls, checking the Buick out. No, I mean, that was pretty good.
Okay.